let's talk about a real baseball team in New York. And who better to discuss the Yankees with than one of my great friends from high school, Justin Ellick. Ellick, how's it going, my man?
What's up, Hank? It's good to talk to you, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my gosh, no problem. First and foremost, let's catch up a little bit. What have you been doing podcast-wise pretty much since we last saw each other in high school? And that's not counting the few encounters we've had at Yankee Stadium, of course.
Sure, buddy. Yeah, no. So recently, last about year or so, I've been working for WABC Radio as an executive producer for a lot of the weekend programming that goes on there. And one of the perks of that is being able to have access to these state-of-the-art studios on a pretty, regular basis. So me and a coworker of mine just probably a few weeks ago started up a visual and audio incorporated podcast that you can find on YouTube. Go to 77 WABC Radio, their YouTube channel. You can also probably find us on our website at wabcradio.com. So right now we're calling it, and the name is up for debate. We're trying to come up with something a little bit more nifty, if you will. But the name right now is, we're keeping it generic. It's just called 77 WABC Sports Talk. And we're having a lot of fun with it. We just get up there. We kind of experiment with different ideas, different visual aspects of we have a whole social media team that kind of helps us with the visual aspect of doing these live broadcasts. So it's good stuff. And, we're slowly kind of trying to build up a little bit of momentum there.
That's awesome, man. I definitely want to check you guys out at some point after the show. You got to send me a link to one of your shows. I'm really down to see this. I can't believe I didn't really know much about this until recently. But anyways, let's get on with our beloved New York Yankees. Since last I talked about the Yankees on this show, they have gone a whopping 19-3. So sounds like a lot of catching up to do. And currently they are on an 11-game winning streak. And what has gone right for the Yankees? Well, I'll quickly go over the series that they've played since I last did an episode here. We took 2 out of 3 from the Baltimore Orioles, 3 out of 4 from the Seattle Mariners, 2 out of 3 in Kansas City. Now, the White Sox series is where everything really started to turn a corner for me personally, hope-wise, because after the trade, I knew the trades were going to help, make no mistake. But this was the series where I'm really starting to have my hope perk up a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I still kind of feel embarrassed about my pessimism early in the season. Not that it wasn't warranted, but at the same time, now it's like, oh my gosh, this team could legitimately compete. They took 2 out of 3 from Chicago. Now, granted, that was the series where we had that bad loss in the Field of Dream games. But if you had told me that it would take another at least 11 games for them to lose after that Field of Dreams game happened, I probably would have been looking at you like, what are you, nuts?
I will say this, though, Hank, about that Field of Dreams game. If we have to take the loss in exchange for what, Major League Baseball in general gained, from doing that event and putting that on and the beautiful job that they did, I would take that, especially in a ball game, in the kind of performance that the White Sox and our beloved Yanks put on. I mean, that was a great ball game from start to finish.
Oh my gosh. Here's the thing I'm going to say about that game. I think it was fun to watch if you weren't really a fan of either team. Like, for me personally, it was like 7-2. You saw Heaney have a meltdown. And then all of a sudden, Judge hits that home run in the ninth. I'm like, okay, they're trying to tease me. And then all of a sudden, boom, Stanton hits it. I'm like, oh gosh, this is it. We're going to win. Little did I realize Zach Britton was pitching the 9th inning.
And he still hasn't really recovered since. I mean, he's still struggling.
No, I mean, he had a better outing in his last appearance, but he ended up having to go on the DL, and he's really had a rough go of it too. And it stinks to see because this is a guy who in years past has been one of the more reliable pitchers in the bullpen. But it really proves my point about relief pitchers. You can rely on them for maybe 2 or 3 years max. And then eventually, whether it be burnout, they fluctuate. That's how it happens.
And in the case of Britton, a lot of these relief pitchers nowadays have that one specialty pitch. And in the case of Britton, it's that power sinker. And if he doesn't have that going for him, he doesn't really have much else to go to. And if he's leaving that up in the zone, right? I mean, a lot of these, big league hitters say that there's really not a much easier pitch to hit than an elevated sinker, because that ball's just kind of spinning right into the barrel of your bat. So I mean, for him, it's just about finding that groove again with that power sinker. And that's what I mean. That's one of the best pitches in the game. That's what makes him one of the best relievers in the game. So if he can find that groove again, I mean, obviously we've seen this guy as a limit for the guy.
Oh my gosh, definitely. And the real thing that really changed really started to give me hope about the White Sox series, because it made me realize this was at the point, remember, where pretty much it felt like 70 to 80% of the team at least was either on the IL or was dealing with COVID, most notably Anthony Rizzo. And for them to take 2 out of 3 in Chicago, like, I had a bad feeling they were going to lose the Royals series, actually, because of not having Anthony Rizzo. I looked at him as like the glue to that starting lineup, and I still think he's the glue to the starting lineup, given the leadership that he's provided and given the fact that he is the most stable first baseman we've had since Mark Teixeira, and that's not an exaggeration.
Well, listen, if they don't tag him with an extension at some point this season, then I'd be pretty upset. I would think they got to give Rizzo some sort of bag in terms of the kind of money, relatively the kind of money that he wants, right? I understand he's not the same player that he was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, right, and you're starting to see a little bit of a decline, but I don't think there's anything wrong with a 4 to 6 year deal here.
No, not at all. And remember, he's a left-handed hitter, which is something that we have pretty much been screaming about all year up until Cashman finally pulled it off. And not to mention, as I said, he's got that leadership quality that you really want. Because let's face it, the Yankees were a rudderless ship up until that happened.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, you had Judge obviously in the locker room trying to pump guys up as the season goes on and having those player-only meetings. But at a certain point, you need some sort of shakeup. And for us, at the trade deadline, that was Gallo and Rizzo.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what's lost during this winning streak, neither of them have really been hitting well. Like everyone's not going to look at that because of the winning. But with that being said, what makes up for it is you still have Stanton and Judge protecting them in the lineup. And then you also have the fact that they are pretty much Gold Glove players. I mean, Joey Gallo, I can give you multiple examples of where he has saved the Yankees in games with his glove during that win streak. Actually, yesterday's game is an example of that too.
Right, that diving catch he made, and again, right. It's not even with the way that they perform, the numbers that they put up personally. It's kind of the effect that they have on the rest of the lineup, plugging 2 lefties in to that lineup. And now you have that righty-lefty stagger at the top, probably like 1 through 6. You're staggering righty-lefty. And that's that's a gauntlet to get through if you're a starting pitcher, especially if you're going through that lineup 2 or 3 times. By the second or third time these hitters are facing you, I mean, they're gonna do some damage. That's just a matter of fact. It's just a matter of how much damage they're going to do. So, I mean, in a playoff series, I mean, there's just no way for me to see an opposing pitcher being able to dominate this lineup top to bottom for 6 or 7 or 8 innings.
Yeah, I agree. And one other thing that hasn't really been talked about is look at the improvement of the starting pitching too. I think that's another key, to October, if they're going to have a successful and deep run in the playoffs.
Of course, and you've got Kluber, on the verge here coming back. I mean, who knows, what he'll come back with. But I mean, before he went down, he was obviously throwing some really good ball.
Definitely, and that's not even including the fact that you still have Herman and Sevy on the IL. What production we're going to get from them, if we're even going to get one of them back, I don't know. But right. I think getting Kluber, in my opinion, this might sound like a hot take, might be the most important pitcher to get back, just for the sheer fact that he's pitched in the postseason before with the Cleveland Indians. Now, granted, we know he hasn't always been successful with the Cleveland Indians, but he's gotten to the point where he's Pettit in the sense that when he pitched, this is something I noticed back in May. This is based off that.
Right.
He was relying on his smarts to win him games. That certainly looked like it was the case when he was throwing his no-hitter. Now, hopefully we don't find out otherwise that it's spider tack, but let me just knock on wood right there.
Listen, with the way they're checking these days, if it was spider tack, he would have been had a 10-game suspension under his belt at this point. I mean, that to me that's a little bit ridiculous. I mean, but as a starting pitcher, you don't necessarily need spider tack. I mean, it could be a mixture of really of really anything. But to your point, right, about guys coming back here and kind of giving the Yanks a boost on the bump, right? You still have Michael King too, who's on the verge of coming back potentially, who could be a good arm, a good extended arm out of the bullpen. I think the problems really do lie with the back end of that bullpen. Obviously, Loizaga has been extremely reliable, but he's really been the only one. I mean, Chad Green's been good as well, but good is, just about as far as I'm going to go with him. I wouldn't say great, I mean, but and I mean, watching Chapman every night is,
oh my God,
25 heart attacks. I can't take it. It's just, I'm sitting there watching him sweat and I'm sweating and he's dripping all. I mean, how can a human being sweat that much? I don't understand it, Hank. And, it's obviously starting, maybe he's sweating so much it's affecting his grip on I can't get a hang. Like, he just can't find the zone with his fastball on some of these nights. And it's ridiculous. He's going to the slider. He hangs it. Guys are bashing him. He's walking guys. It's crazy. He can't get it out.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started about Chapman. Like, I made a tweet when the Yankees, I think it was his last game before he had to go on the IL briefly for the inflamed elbow. I said that watching Chapman pitch should probably come with a warning from the Surgeon General or something like that.
Yeah, and as a hitter, you got to look at.
Oh my gosh. Like, he either has it or he doesn't. I feel this is kind of a weird comparison, but I feel like he's the AJ Burnett of closers in that sense. He's never in between. Right. And you remember early in the season, he was absolutely dominant.
Yeah, of course. Oh my God. He went, I mean, what was it? Almost 30 games, or not 30, but, he went a while without blowing a save.
I don't even think he allowed an earned run until like maybe late May, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think he had a flat ERA through like 30 appearances or something. I think that was the number. So, I mean, obviously when the guy turns it on, there's nobody better, but it's just a matter of how bad are you going to get before you can turn it back on? Because it's starting to get a little dangerous here.
Now, I will say this, though. With him being a free agent, could you potentially see Jonathan Loizaga, like, pitching in more closer situations, like, down the road? Because
definitely. I really like what I've seen from him. I really do. I mean, Jack, he's evolved from, that kid we saw, Johnny Lasagna, to now this potent, like tatted up. He's like, he looks more buff. He's obviously bulked up a little bit and he's pumping gas. I mean, he sits at like 100. So, I mean, and he can paint the corners. I mean, guy's got control over a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. I mean, what more could you ask for out of a closing pitcher these days?
Oh my gosh, it's insane. And my favorite Johnny Lasagna moment was the first game of the Red Sox series. He gives up single, or he might have had a walk in between, but he gave up a single that was right through the shift to Schwarber. And then I believe I can't remember. It was either a walk or a single, second or third.
Right.
Not the point. Bases loaded. And the next three guys, he gets fly out, strikeout, strikeout. Game over. Mm-hmm. He gets right out of that unscathed. And like, that's a type of game that I feel like if it happened earlier, Red Sox probably come back and win. But that game definitely is another example of how it's just such a different team. And Loizaga had other moments this year, but that game in particular was the one that stood out to me of him being clutch.
Of course. I think first half of the season we were never firing on all cylinders, and the rest of the AL East was, and you're still seeing that out of the Rays. I mean, the Rays are, to be honest, to me, they're one of the biggest threats in the AL. Probably them and the White Sox are the two teams I'm most scared of. The way the Red Sox are playing currently doesn't scare me. They're struggling to find their identity again, and I think we're starting to build enough ground there in that wild card race that if we have to play them in a one game wild card playoff, then I'm not too worried about the outcome of that game at this point. Obviously, it's that Red Sox Yankees, chutzpah that comes with it, but it'll be at the stadium, and then that gives me confidence.
Yes, and let me post the wild card standings for you right here, just so that you can see them. So, I absolutely agree. And as I mentioned, we have 2 or 3 pitchers that are very capable of shutting down that Red Sox lineup. If let's say it has to come down to that 1-game playoff. Like, I don't want to get my hopes up too high because we're not there yet. We're still only a month away from the last regular season series against the Red Sox at Fenway Park, which I'm really excited to be going to that one.
To hell with the wild card. I mean, let's chase after the division. I mean, as far as I know, we still got games left against the Rays. We have to pick up some ground. So, I mean, there's no reason to think that we can't sneak up on the Rays here and grab the division. I mean, especially with, as good as they are, they're, I hate to say this, but they're still the Rays.
For sure, the Rays.
At the end of the day, we have the entire Bronx, on our backs, and they have like 15 fans that show up to Tropicana Field. So it's like, let's be realistic here. It's like when it comes down to it, like, okay, if we're playing, you guys at the Trop, it's like we're bringing the Bronx with us. So it's like,
it's funny you should mention the Trop because, or as I like to call that place, the Circus 10.
Yeah.
That's often been considered a house of horrors. And by the way, Tom wants to let you know you got a sick beard, and I agree with him, by the way.
Thanks, Tom. Takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah, for sure. I've grown many of those myself during Ranger runs.
I remember.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, the Rays. So many people associate that as like the Yankees' house of horrors. It's kind of funny that I should say that because the Yankees actually had a winning record there this season. And
go ahead.
No. I forgot. You were saying something.
I was just gonna say it's a nightmare to play there for any opposing team. I mean, it's if you're not playing there on a more regular basis, it's probably one of the harder ballparks to get accustomed to. Just due to the fact that it's not really a ballpark. It's like a candy land of some sort. It's like if you had just a piece of concrete and you laid like a carpet over it, that would be like Tropicana.
That is so that's accurate, actually. And not only that, didn't even put that stadium in downtown Tampa. They put it in like St. Petersburg, which is basically in the outskirts.
Best thing for that franchise would be to get the hell out of there. You gotta get out of Tampa Bay.
Either get out of Tampa Bay or just move right downtown like the Buccaneers and the Lightning. Yeah. You see why they're successful fan-wise.
There you go.
Anyways, let's get back to the lineup a little bit because there are a few guys who have really been standing out to me hitting-wise. Luke Voigt, during this time, becoming a DH. He's been on fire and killing it. And I want to know your thoughts on his comments saying, he's like, I'm not getting enough playing time. I was the leading home run hitter. Would you say that was fair or foul? See what I did there?
I would say it's fair. Not only is it fair, but I would I'd love to see it. I think that brings not only he's not coming out there saying, hey, I hate Anthony Rizzo and screw him for coming and trying to take my job. It's like neither of these guys had control over that situation. They're both trying to just go out there and help the team the best that they can. And from a managerial standpoint, if I'm Aaron Boone, I love to see that out of a guy who's, kind of been on and off the IL all year, coming off, obviously, that great year he had in a shortened season, but still a great year. Any year you lead the league in home runs is a win. So, coming back and trying to, maintain that momentum as this big bat in the middle of this great lineup, I love to see it. I mean, that motivates me. And if I'm Anthony Rizzo, why wouldn't that motivate you? So, I think it's a win-win. I think both guys are professionals at this point in their careers, and they're not going to really go head-to-head in terms of, hey, give me more playing time. Hey, give me more playing time. If I'm Aaron Boone, it's my job to figure out how to get both of these guys in the lineup every single day because that gives you the best chance of winning. And it's funny you say that because generally speaking, I think this is probably because of the Giants fan in me. I'm usually of the belief where it's like, oh, talk is cheap, just play the game. But in this case, Luke Voigt's not just saying it. His bat's been doing the talking, and he had a great. And it's not like he just said it, right? He was asked a question. He was answering a question.
Yeah, so and what do you expect him to say? Oh, I love being.
Yeah, I love being hurt. I love not playing.
I
love riding the bench. I mean, come on. Let's be realistic here. There's no reason for anybody to be upset about his comments, I don't think.
No, I I love it. And I love that it's helped him play better. And I love that you're seeing Rizzo play better too. Maybe not hitting wise lately, but at the very least, like I said, he's saved the Yankees with the glove. Like, look at the 9th inning of the game that Chapman almost blew. He made a diving stop that of a hit that probably would have been a double down the right field line. And then second thing he did was at the end of the game when there was the ground out that like ended with a challenge, his scoop up. That reminded me of many times where Teixeira bailed us out in years past.
Yeah, and Voigt doesn't make that play, to be honest with you.
No way.
I love Luke Voigt. He's not making that play.
Oh, I completely agree with that. The other guy that's really stood out to me is Giancarlo Stanton. And, of course, we kind of have to talk about him whenever we talk about the Yankees offense because he's pretty much the lightning rod elephant in the room, whatever you want to call it, based on his contract. And looking at what's happened since he's come, a lot of people have soured on him at first, and rightfully so because you took on that, like, 13-year gajillion-dollar contract. Like, of course you want him to do more, but let's not forget, he did come up big in the postseason a lot last year. It certainly wasn't his fault that they didn't make it past the Tampa Rays. This year, one of the things that I felt with Giancarlo was I want to see him play more in the field, not be a DH. And I don't know about you, Alec, but like I feel like him playing in the field has really made him a better hitter this year. I'm seeing a better approach of him at the plate. I'm not seeing that swing and miss. It's a totally different hitter. I love it.
And I think that would happen with anybody, man. I mean, just from experience of playing the game, I mean, you know, there's downtime. And to increase that downtime and make your, be put in the lineup, slotted in as a DH, and you're now sitting out about 2 innings in between at bats. I mean, you can get complacent, you can get bored, you can get tired, you can get, you're out of the tune of the game, you're out of the flow of the game, you're not invested. I mean, that had to just, even if you try to focus as best you can, you're still, what are you going to do? Sit on the top step and hang your hands over the bar of the dugout? I mean, come on. Like, if you're playing the field, you're into every single pitch, you're mentally just checked in for the entire duration of the game. You're not checking in, checking out. You're checking in for, 5-6 pitches. You're checking out for 2 innings. I mean, if you're a DH, like, think about it, right? You're only involved in like a small percentage of the game, that time that you're up at bat. Yeah. Or, if you get on base, now you're a base runner and you can impact the game in that way. But I mean, I think what we're seeing happen with Giancarlo would happen with any everyday DH if you just slotted him in the field. And the problem is most DHs aren't good in the field, but Giancarlo has experience out there. First of all, he's got a cannon. Okay. And second of all, he can still move. So there's no reason that playing him in a corner outfield position, let's say left field, especially if you're going to have, Judgy and right. I mean, that's not a liability, I wouldn't say. I really wouldn't go as far as to say. I mean, when he was in Miami, he was a Gold Glover.
Right. For sure. And, another thing, we mentioned the lineup being more balanced. I think that's also another thing that's factored into him hitting.
I think part of it could be coincidental that, we've now acquired these 2 new guys. And because of that, right, he's playing the field more. But, I mean, who really knows if it's because he's playing the field? It could be that staggered lineup, exactly like you said. But I'm just under the belief that if you're in the field, if you're playing both ways, that automatically allows you to be more checked into the ball game.
Definitely. I feel like it's gone hand in hand for sure. But now as we get up to a big 4-game series, what are your expectations going into Oakland? Now, remember how I mentioned that Tampa Bay was what many people called the House of Horrors? I beg to differ. I think it's Oakland. Because if you look at the Yankees and their track record playing at Oakland, they've only won once there since 2017.
Wow. I didn't know that. Incredible. Yeah. Wow.
What is your expectations going into the Oakland series? I think this is going to be the series where the Yankees finally get at least a split.
Well, listen, I mean, Oakland's a good team. Nobody's debating that. And this has major wild card implications with Oakland just being right under the Sox. So, I mean, it'd be great in any 4-game series. It's really hard to go out there and sweep. I think a split against a team like this would be a win in most people's eyes, especially at this stage in the season and coming off 11 straight wins. Listen, if they can go in and massacre the Oakland A's and win 4 straight and push this to a 15-game winning streak, then by all means, sign me up. I'll buy World Series tickets. But I mean, but I just don't think the likelihood of that happening, especially against a team this good and a team that's played this good all season, is not that, it's not that like as good as the Yankees are playing. I'm trying to be realistic here. I think a split would be a win.
Well, here's the thing. A series win isn't entirely out of the question. Let me give you the pitching. Let me give you the pitching lineups for this weekend. We got Tyon starting tonight. I believe Cole's starting tomorrow night. Yes, he is against Sean Manaea. That could go either way. You got Nasty Nestor pitching. Oh my gosh, he's been filthy. I love it. He's been one of their more consistent pitchers all season.
Oh, yeah, and that mustache.
Oh my gosh, it's got like a Thurman Munson, Sparky Lyle, or Catfish Hunter, Donnie Baseball like feel.
Listen, man, he's crafty. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we've seen. That's the kind of energy we've seen in this surge of the Yankees. Energy coming from guys that you wouldn't expect. I mean, who would have thought we'd be throwing Nestor Cortez out there every 5 days at the beginning of the season? That wasn't really, in the cards. So, listen,
he pitched 7 innings in that game against the Twins too. That was incredible. And also, I forgot to mention before I forget, Monty's pitching the 4th game. So, really, honestly, when I looked at the second game of that Braves series, I was like, okay, that can go either way. I'm just glad the Yankees have their rotation set up for the Oakland A's series. Now, granted, had they lost in the 9th inning the way it almost happened, I would have been extremely what just happened? But still, if it had been just like a normal loss to the Atlanta Braves, I'd been like, oh, okay, at least you got your pitching. It's like back in the old days when the Giants were good, and it's like you play the San Diego Chargers, you lose to them, you have the Cowboys next week. It's like you trade a loss to the Chargers for the Dallas Cowboys. But you know what? Yeah. Screw that. I'm greedy. I want to get at least 3 out of 4 against the Oakland A's. I don't know about you.
Of course. Totally. It's tough going into Oakland. I mean, that's not a fun place to play, like you mentioned, for the Yankees. But 3 out of 4 obviously is not out of the question. The way this team is going with the guys we got going on the bump for these 4 games, I have complete and utter faith in. And I'm never going to sit here and say that the Oakland A's are a better baseball team than the New York Yankees, no matter how bad the Yankees are. So, my brain won't allow me to work that way. So we'll be going into everyone. The only problem is first pitch is 9, 10 o'clock. So staying up for these games is going to be tough.